Piracy has been a problem for as long as there has been maritime trade, so pirates and piracy can be traced back to ancient times. However, for the sake of the video, we will focus on the so-called Golden Age of piracy. This time period is generally considered to have taken place from the late 17th century to the early 18th century, between the 1650s and the 1730s. This video is brought to you by Bullet Clash, a free multiplayer mobile game. You can download the game for free today from Google Play Store or Apple App Store. Download Bullet Clash today. Another reason was a desire for adventure and a sense of freedom. Pirates often offered a chance for individuals to escape the restrictions of society and live a more adventurous life on the open sea. Some pirates were also driven by a desire for revenge. They may have been mistreated by authorities or suffered injustices that led them to seek retribution through acts of piracy. Then forced to serve on board ships against their will. Some of these sailors would later escape or be released from service. Being a sailor in Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau in the Bahamas during the 1500s to 1600s was a challenging and dangerous occupation, as these islands were situated in the midst of the Caribbean Sea, which was known for its unpredictable weather and treacherous currents. Additionally, sailors during this time period faced numerous other hazards, including disease, piracy, and shipwrecks. Sailors in Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau during this time period were often employed by European powers such as Spain, France, and England, who were vying for control of the Caribbean and its resources. These sailors would transport goods such as tobacco, sugar, and slaves between the Caribbean and Europe, and they would also engage in naval warfare against other European powers and pirates. Life at sea during the 1500s to 1600s was grueling, and sailors were often subject to long hours, harsh weather conditions, and cramped living quarters. Disease was also a constant threat, as sailors were often malnourished and exposed to unsanitary conditions. Many sailors suffered from scurvy, a disease caused by a lack of vitamin C, which could lead to weakness, fatigue, and death. Piracy was also a significant threat to sailors during this time period. Pirates often preyed on ships carrying valuable cargo, and they were known for their ruthless tactics and violence. Sailors who were captured by pirates faced the risk of being held for ransom, sold into slavery, or even killed. Overall, being a sailor in Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau during the 1500s to 1600s was a challenging and dangerous occupation, as sailors faced numerous hazards and were often at the mercy of unpredictable weather and piracy. However, it was also a profession that provided adventure and the opportunity for financial gain, which was attractive to many sailors at the time. Being a sailor in these areas was still a challenging occupation. During the early 16th century, these islands were still largely unsettled and undeveloped, and sailors would have faced many of the same hazards and challenges as sailors in other parts of the Caribbean. Sailors during this time period were primarily employed by European powers such as Spain, France, and England, who were seeking to establish a foothold in the New World. These sailors would transport goods and supplies between Europe and the Caribbean, and they would also engage in naval warfare against other European powers. Life at sea during this time period was difficult, and sailors were often subject to harsh weather conditions, long hours, and cramped living quarters. Disease was also a constant threat, and many sailors suffered from scurvy, a disease caused by a lack of vitamin C, which could lead to weakness, fatigue, and death. Despite the challenges, being a sailor in the Caribbean during this time period could also be a lucrative profession, as sailors could earn a significant amount of money by transporting valuable goods such as tobacco, sugar, and spices. Additionally, sailors who proved themselves in battle could earn promotions and other rewards from their European employers. Overall, being a sailor in Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau before they became pirate strongholds was a challenging but potentially rewarding occupation. The hazards and challenges of life at sea were offset by the opportunities for financial gain and adventure that the profession provided. Let's take a look at the ports and cargo to get an understanding of how it played role in the Golden Age piracy pirates' origin story. The ports. Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau in the Bahamas were all important ports in the Caribbean during the colonial era, and European powers began transporting cargo to and from these ports in the 17th century. Tortuga, a small island off the coast of Haiti, was originally settled by the French in the mid-17th century and became a haven for pirates and privateers. The French used Tortuga as a base for their naval operations in the Caribbean, and they transported goods to and from the island. Jamaica, which was also colonized by the Spanish in the early 16th century, was captured by the British in 1655. The British established large sugar plantations on the island and transported goods, including sugar and rum, to Europe. The English established sugar plantations on the island, which required a large labor force. Many poor farmers and laborers from England, Ireland, and Scotland were recruited to work on these plantations, and they were often treated poorly by the plantation owners. Additionally, enslaved Africans were brought to Jamaica to work on the plantations, and they made up a significant portion of the island's population. Fishing was also an important industry in Jamaica, as the island was surrounded by rich fishing grounds. Local fishermen would catch fish and other seafood to sell in the local markets or to export to other countries. Nassau, the capital of the Bahamas, was founded by the British in the late 17th century. The city was strategically located near important trade routes, and the British used it as a base for their naval operations in the region. They transported goods to and from Nassau, including tobacco, cotton, and sugar. In the Bahamas, craftsmen played an important role in society. Many craftsmen were skilled in trades such as shipbuilding, carpentry, and blacksmithing, and they were essential for building and repairing ships, which were important for trade and commerce in the region. As mentioned earlier, during the 1600s, cargo was transported in ships to all ports of the Caribbean for a variety of reasons. Piracy continued to be a problem in various parts of the world in the centuries that followed, and there have been periods of heightened piracy activity at various times throughout history. Today, piracy remains a problem in some parts of the world, particularly in areas like the Gulf of Aden and the coast of Somalia, where pirates have been known to target commercial ships passing through the region. One of the primary reasons was trade. The Caribbean was an important trading region during the 1600s, and many ships carrying goods such as sugar, tobacco, rum, and other commodities sailed to and from these islands. Another reason why cargo was transported to these islands was to support the various military garrisons that were stationed there. European powers such as Spain, France, and England established military bases on these islands to protect their interests in the Caribbean, and they required supplies and provisions to sustain their soldiers and sailors. Ships carrying food, weapons, ammunition, and other supplies were therefore sent to these islands to support the military garrisons. Additionally, ships carrying enslaved Africans were brought to these islands during the 1600s. Enslaved Africans were used as laborers on plantations, in mines, and in other industries throughout the Caribbean. Many of the enslaved Africans who were brought to the Caribbean were transported on ships that sailed to and from Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau in the Bahamas. Overall, cargo was transported to Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau in the Bahamas during the 1600s for a variety of reasons, including trade, military support, and the transportation of enslaved Africans, and it played a significant role in the economic development of the Caribbean during the colonial era. Tortuga, farming, and fishing were also important industries, as the island was not suitable for large-scale agriculture. Overall, farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen were essential members of society in Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau in the Bahamas during the 1600s. They played important roles in the local economy and were essential for the survival and growth of these communities, as well as ideal areas for shipping cargo. During the 1650s, several European powers were involved in wars and conflicts with each other. The main European powers involved in these conflicts were 1. England. During the 1650s, England was involved in several conflicts, including the English Civil War, 1642–1651, the First Anglo-Dutch War, 1652–1654, and the Second Anglo-Dutch War, 1665–1667. 2. France. France was involved in several conflicts during the 1650s, including the Franco-Spanish War, 1635 to 1659, and the Fronde, 1648 to 1653, which was a series of civil wars that took place in France. 3. Spain. Spain was involved in several conflicts during the 1650s, including the Franco-Spanish War and the ongoing conflicts with the Dutch Republic. 4. Dutch Republic. The Dutch Republic was involved in several conflicts during the 1650s, including the First and Second Anglo-Dutch Wars and the ongoing conflict with Spain. 5. Portugal. Portugal was involved in a conflict with the Dutch Republic over control of Brazil, which lasted from 1640 to 1661. These European powers were often fighting for control of trade routes, colonies, and resources, and their conflicts had a significant impact on the Caribbean and other regions of the world. There were several causes of the wars between European powers in the 1650s, which impacted the Caribbean and other regions of the world. One of the primary causes was the competition for territory and resources. European powers, including Spain, France, England, and the Netherlands, were competing for control over trade routes, markets, and resources such as gold, silver, and valuable commodities like sugar and tobacco. Another cause was religious and ideological differences. At the time, Europe was divided between Protestant and Catholic nations, and these divisions often played out in conflicts between European powers. For example, the English Civil War, which lasted from 1642 to 1651, pitted Protestant supporters of Parliament against the Royalist supporters of the Catholic King Charles I. The expansion of European empires and the desire to establish new colonies and trading posts also contributed to the conflicts between European powers. As European powers expanded their empires, they often came into conflict with each other as they vied for control over territories and resources. Finally, the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, and the 80 Years' War, 1568 to 1648, had left many European powers exhausted and in debt, which contributed to tensions and conflicts between them as they struggled to maintain their positions and interests in the face of economic challenges. In the context of the Caribbean, the wars between European powers were often fought over control of valuable resources, such as sugar and tobacco, and the strategic control of ports and trade routes. The wars often resulted in the destruction of ships, the displacement of populations, and the disruption of trade and commerce in the region. During the 1650s, there were several factors that contributed to unemployment among sailors, soldiers, fishermen, craftsmen, and farmers in Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau in the Bahamas. Pirates typically lived on board their ships, which were often small and cramped, with few comforts or amenities. They were constantly on the move, raiding ships and coastal towns for supplies and booty. They faced many risks, including storms, shipwrecks, disease, and attacks by other pirates or by naval vessels sent to capture them. One factor was the disruption of trade caused by wars between European powers. During the 1650s, there were several conflicts between England, France, and Spain in the Caribbean, which led to the disruption of trade and commerce. Many ships were attacked and destroyed during these conflicts, which led to a reduction in demand for sailors, soldiers, and fishermen. Another factor was the decline of the sugar industry in the Caribbean. Sugar was a major export crop in the Caribbean during the 1600s, but by the mid-1650s, many sugar plantations had been abandoned due to declining soil fertility and labor shortages. This led to a reduction in demand for laborers, including farmers and enslaved Africans. Furthermore, piracy became a growing problem in the Caribbean during the 1650s, which also contributed to unemployment among sailors, soldiers, and fishermen. Many ships were attacked and looted by pirates, which led to a reduction in the number of ships and the demand for sailors and fishermen. The presence of pirates also made it difficult for traders and merchants to conduct business in the region, which led to a reduction in demand for craftsmen and other skilled workers. Overall, the disruption of trade, the decline of the sugar industry, and the rise of piracy were some of the factors that contributed to unemployment among sailors, soldiers, fishermen, craftsmen, and farmers in Tortuga, Jamaica, and Nassau in the Bahamas during the 1650s. Unemployed farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen in the Caribbean during the 17th and 18th centuries may have been drawn to piracy for a variety of reasons. One reason is economic hardship. Many of these individuals may have struggled to make a living through traditional means and saw piracy as a way to earn money quickly. Piracy offered the potential for great rewards, including valuable cargoes and loot from captured ships, which could be sold for a significant profit. Another reason is political instability. The Caribbean was a hotly contested area during this time period, with different European powers fighting for control. This instability may have contributed to a lack of employment opportunities for many people, leading them to turn to piracy as a way to survive. Dissatisfaction with working conditions may have also played a role. Fishermen and farmers, for example, may have found the work grueling and unrewarding, while craftsmen may have been struggling to find work. Pirates, on the other hand, were often able to work on their own terms and had a greater degree of autonomy. Additionally, piracy offered the allure of adventure and excitement, which may have appealed to those looking for a change in their lives. Pirates were often seen as daring and bold, and their exploits were the stuff of legend. Once individuals turned to piracy, they would typically form a crew and begin attacking ships on the high seas. Pirate crews were often egalitarian, with captains and other officers being elected by the crew. They often had a strict code of conduct, which helped to maintain order and discipline among the crew. Despite the risks and challenges, piracy offered a chance for adventure and a sense of freedom that was hard to find elsewhere. Pirates lived by their own rules and often had a strong sense of camaraderie and loyalty to their crewmates. They also enjoyed a reputation for daring and defiance that sometimes made them heroes in the eyes of the public. Overall, unemployment, economic hardship, political instability, dissatisfaction with working conditions, and a desire for adventure may have all contributed to why some farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen turned to piracy in the Caribbean during the 17th and 18th centuries. While some pirates may have started out as unemployed sailors, soldiers, craftsmen, farmers, and fishermen, it is important to note that not all pirates were unemployed. In fact, some pirates were highly skilled sailors and seafarers who turned to piracy as a means of making a living. Some pirates were former privateers who had been licensed by governments to attack enemy ships during times of war, while others may have been sailors who were dissatisfied with their working conditions or pay. During the Golden Age of piracy, 1650s to 1730s, pirates frequented many different parts of the world, but they were particularly active in the Caribbean Sea, the Atlantic coast of North America, and the west coast of Africa. And they preyed on ships carrying goods such as sugar, spices, and slaves. The Caribbean was a popular location for piracy because it was home to many ports and trade routes that were vulnerable to attack. Along the Atlantic coast of North America, pirates operated in areas such as the Chesapeake Bay, the coast of Virginia and the Carolinas, and the New England coast. They targeted ships carrying valuable cargo such as furs, tobacco, and lumber. On the west coast of Africa, pirates targeted the ships of European powers engaged in the slave trade. They attacked slave ships and seized the cargo of human beings that was being transported to the Americas. Overall, pirates were active in many parts of the world during the Golden Age of piracy, but the Caribbean, the Atlantic coast of North America, and the west coast of Africa were among the most frequented areas. The term Golden Age of piracy refers to a period of time during the late 17th and early 18th centuries when piracy was particularly prevalent and infamous. This era saw the rise of some of the most notorious pirates in history, including Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Bonnie, and William Kidd. Overall, life for pirates was a mix of danger, excitement, and hardship. It was a rough and tumble existence that required strength, cunning, and a willingness to take risks in order to survive. The term Golden Age implies that this was a period of great prosperity and success for pirates, and in some ways, it was. During this time, piracy was a significant threat to the shipping industry and naval powers of the time, and pirates were able to amass considerable wealth through their raids on ships and coastal towns. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a video.